You won't believe what happened when my HOA tried to kick me out of my own lake cabin. One day, I'm relaxing by the water, and then I get a knock on the door that changed everything. Suddenly, I'm slapped with unfair fines, threats of eviction, and worst of all, they're using the clubhouse I helped pay for as a weapon against me. But instead of backing down, I fought back in a way they never expected. And the best part? I ended up evicting their clubhouse for trespassing on my land. Stick around, because this story is full of twists, drama, and how one homeowner took on the system, and won. I was finally starting to enjoy the peace and quiet I had longed for. My lake cabin, a rustic but well-maintained retreat tucked away in the woods, was everything I'd ever wanted. No noise, no traffic, no city stress. Just me, the trees, and the sound of water lapping gently against the dock. It was the kind of life I used to dream about when I was stuck in a cubicle, drowning in emails and meetings that never ended. Out here, the birds were my alarm clock, and the smell of pine was stronger than any cup of coffee. I had bought the cabin 5 years ago, as a weekend getaway. But after the pandemic and a permanent shift to remote work, I decided to make it my full-time home. I renovated the inside, installed solar panels, upgraded the plumbing, even reinforced the dock with my own 2 hands. It wasn't just a cabin anymore. It was home. And every morning when the mist rose off the lake and the world felt brand new, I reminded myself how lucky I was to have found this slice of peace. So you can imagine how weird it was to hear a loud knock at the door one morning. Not a gentle knock. Not a friendly neighborly hello. But a firm, repeated thud that echoed through the wood. Bam. 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 I opened the door, coffee mug in hand, half expecting it to be a delivery driver or maybe a lost hiker. But instead, standing on my front porch was a woman in her 50s, dressed like she was on her way to a board meeting, clipboard in one hand, a stack of papers in the other, and a look on her face that screamed, "I'm here to make your day worse." "Good morning," she said, not even bothering to smile. "Are you the resident here?" "I am," I replied, already getting a weird vibe. "Can I help you with something?" "I'm Karen Whitmore, president of the Green Shores Homeowners Association." She said it like I should be impressed. "I'm here about your residency here at the lake cabin." I blinked. "Okay," she handed me a piece of paper. It looked like a violation notice, complete with an official HOA letterhead, a citation number, and a fine amount at the bottom. My name was on it. "You're not permitted to reside here full-time," she said, pointing to a bolded section of the form. "This property falls under the HOA's jurisdiction. Weekenders only. Long-term residence is against the rules." I stared at her, then at the paper, then back at her. "You've got the wrong property," I said. "I'm not part of any HOA. I bought this land directly from the previous owner. No shared services, no HOA fees, nothing." She chuckled, actually chuckled, like I was some ignorant fool. "You may want to check again. The HOA boundary was expanded 10 years ago. This cabin was absorbed into Green Shores oversight. You're now considered a resident member. And unfortunately, you're in violation of multiple community guidelines." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt my blood pressure rise as the peaceful morning I was enjoying vanished like fog in the sun. I took a deep breath and calmly said, "This is private property. I own it. No one mentioned an HOA when I bought it, and I've never paid a single HOA fee in 5 years. You're mistaken." But she didn't back down. She smirked and said, "Our legal team will be in touch. You may want to start packing." Then she turned around, walked off my porch like she owned the place, and drove away in her shiny black SUV. I stood there, heart racing, the violation notice trembling in my hand. That knock on the door? It wasn't just a rude interruption. It was a declaration of war. I couldn't get her smug expression out of my head. That woman, Karen Whitmore, HOA president, had looked at me not like a neighbor, not like someone making a mistake, but like I was some kind of intruder in my own home. The way she spoke to me was sharp, controlled, and condescending, like I was some squatter who had wandered onto her perfectly manicured little suburb. But this wasn't a suburb. This was my land, nestled between old pine groves and a private section of lakefront property I'd worked my whole life to afford. There were no sidewalks here, no cookie-cutter homes, no street lamps. Just my cabin, a gravel driveway, and 2 acres of natural forest wrapping around the water like a quiet hug. And yet, she acted like I didn't belong here. That look in her eyes, that sharp glance at my flannel shirt and muddy boots. It wasn't just about rules. It was about power. Control. She looked at me the same way bouncers scan IDs at a VIP lounge, trying to find a reason to say, "Sorry, not good enough." I replayed the conversation in my head as I sat down on the porch steps, the violation notice still clutched in my hand. It was printed on high-quality cardstock, which somehow made it even more irritating. Who prints threats on luxury paper? She had claimed my cabin was part of the Green Shores HOA, that their boundary had been expanded years ago, and I was now subject to community standards, a fancy phrase that meant I was no longer free to live how I wanted, on land I legally owned. It made no sense. When I bought this property, I had done everything by the book. Title search, land survey, county records. Not a single mention of a homeowners association, not even a whisper. My realtor had been crystal clear, this was a non-HOA property. I pulled out the folder I kept in the kitchen drawer, the one labeled Property Docs in thick black Sharpie. Inside were my deed, tax receipts, county plat maps, all proof that I owned this land free and clear. I flipped through them, scanning for anything I might have missed. Nothing. No HOA. I wasn't losing it, she was flat out wrong. But here's the thing, people like her don't care about facts. They care about perception, appearances, authority. She'd shown up on my porch, flashing a title and tossing out legal buzzwords, fully expecting me to roll over and obey. And when I didn't, she went into lawyer mode. I could already tell what was coming next. More notices, more threats, probably a letter from some attorney trying to scare me into compliance. It was a tactic. Intimidation masked as administration. But she messed with the wrong guy. I wasn't just some off-the-grid hermit. I was a former systems engineer, detail-obsessed, process-driven, and stubborn as hell. If she wanted to take this to court, fine. I'd bring the receipts. All of them. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Later that day, I noticed a car parked across the lake on the far side, just barely visible between the trees. White SUV. Binoculars maybe. Or maybe my imagination was just in overdrive. But paranoia has a funny way of creeping in once someone tries to take what's yours. The violation notice said I had 30 days to vacate or face daily fines of up to $1,000. Absolutely laughable, but also dangerous if they tried to push it legally. The kicker? They didn't even know what I knew yet. They had no idea that their little clubhouse, the one they used for community events and HOA meetings, depended on access through my land. And once I confirmed that, I smiled. Because if they wanted a fight, they were about to get one. As I stared at the violation notice in my hand, something strange happened. I laughed. Not out of amusement, not because anything was particularly funny, but because the entire situation was so ridiculous it bordered on surreal. It was the kind of laugh you let out when your brain just can't process the stupidity of what's happening. There I was, standing barefoot on my own front porch, holding a flimsy piece of paper that claimed I was somehow breaking rules I'd never agreed to, issued by an HOA I'd never joined, led by a woman I'd never met until 5 minutes ago. It was like a stranger walking into your house, rearranging your furniture, and then handing you a bill for unauthorized decor. She was completely, comically wrong. Still chuckling, I sat down at my worn wooden table inside and took a closer look at the notice. It was filled with official-sounding language, residency violation, failure to comply, fines assessed daily. And right there in bold red ink, you are in violation of Green Shores HOA residency policy. They even had the nerve to list visible wood piles and unauthorized dock maintenance as secondary infractions. Wood piles. In the woods. On lakefront property. Where exactly did they think I was supposed to put firewood? In a storage unit. I flipped the notice over and read the fine print. It referenced HOA rulebooks, membership clauses, enforcement procedures. It all sounded very intimidating, until you realized it only applied to actual members of their association, which I was not. That's the part they didn't seem to understand, or refuse to acknowledge. I'd bought this cabin from an elderly man named George Lindstrom, a Vietnam vet who had lived here since the 80s. When he sold me the place, he told me something I'd never forgotten. This land is clean, son. No HOAs, no shared wells, no tangled boundaries. You own it, you control it. And he was right. My deed was simple and ironclad. My property lay just outside the HOA's development, a twist in the boundary that followed the lake's curve, excluding this lot entirely. On paper, on the tax rolls, and in every official record, my property was private. So I wasn't just confident they were wrong, I knew it. But that didn't stop them from trying to bluff me. That's what people like Karen Whitmore do. They count on most folks being too overwhelmed or uninformed to push back. They count on fear doing the work that facts can't. And if fear doesn't work, they escalate: letters, threats, lawsuits, pressure. But me? I'm not built like that. I grabbed my phone and called a local real estate attorney I'd worked with before, just to be sure. Brad, I've got an HOA trying to tell me my property is under their jurisdiction. Can you pull up the county plat and boundary records for Green Shores? 15 minutes later, I had my answer. Yeah, Brad said, tapping on his keyboard. You're good. Their boundaries stop 300 feet short of your lot line. You're not on their tax parcel overlay, and your deed has no mention of HOA membership. This is classic overreach. Want me to send you the map for backup? Please, I said, smiling. Now I had the proof. Karen might have strutted up my driveway with her clipboard and corporate attitude, but she didn't have a legal leg to stand on. She thought she could intimidate me into compliance. She thought I'd panic, pack up, and disappear. But instead, I was about to do the one thing she never expected. I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. 3 days after Karen Whitmore's unannounced visit, a certified letter arrived. I found it stuffed awkwardly in my mailbox, wedged between an outdoor supply catalog and an electricity bill. The envelope was cream-colored, formal, and embossed with the Green Shores HOA logo, a tacky design that featured a sailboat, some pine trees, and a slogan underneath that read, "Preserving Community Through Standards." What a joke. I opened the letter with zero expectations and even less patience. Inside was a printed document titled Notice of Final Warning, addressed to me by name, and signed by, who else? Karen herself. It read, as previously discussed, your continued residence in the property at my address is in violation of Green Shores HOA Section B guidelines regarding full-time occupancy. You are hereby instructed to vacate the premises within 30 days of this notice. Failure to comply may result in legal escalation, daily fines, and formal removal. Formal removal. That line stuck out like a rusty nail. Who did this woman think she was? This wasn't a leased apartment or a rented condo. This was a deeded property, my property, and I wasn't going anywhere. Still, something about the phrasing chilled me. Not because I thought she could actually have me removed, but because it confirmed what I already suspected. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was personal. She didn't just want compliance, she wanted control. Later that afternoon, I heard the familiar crunch of tires on gravel. I looked out the front window and, like a bad sitcom rerun, saw the same black SUV pull up to the edge of my driveway. Out stepped Karen, dressed this time in a business casual blazer and slacks, as if she were about to close a real estate deal. She didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just walked up to the porch like she owned the air around her. I met her at the steps, arms crossed. Back so soon? I asked flatly. I wanted to make sure you received the letter, she said, handing me a second copy as if I hadn't just opened the first. We're moving forward with enforcement. I raised an eyebrow. Even though I've already confirmed, legally, that my property isn't under HOA jurisdiction? Her expression didn't budge. It was like talking to a robot programmed to enforce imaginary rules. You may believe that, she said calmly, but the HOA board disagrees. The community voted years ago to extend jurisdiction around the lakefront perimeter. That includes your parcel. No, I said, just as calm, the county disagrees. My lawyer pulled the boundary maps. You don't own a single inch of my land, and your little club has zero say over what I do here. She bristled, just slightly. This isn't about ownership. It's about community impact. Your full-time presence here violates our charter and disrupts the environment we've worked hard to preserve. I had to laugh again. You mean the environment where you bulldozed half a mile of trees to build a tennis court? That environment? She stiffened. You'll have to vacate, she said coldly. One way or another, this will be resolved. I took a step forward, standing on my own porch, inches from her. You're right, I said. It will be resolved. But not the way you think. She turned and walked away, tight-lipped, her heels clicking across my wooden steps like nails in a coffin. As she pulled out of my driveway, I looked out toward the old dirt trail that cut through the far end of my land, the one the HOA used for access to their lakefront clubhouse. They'd built it illegally. No easement. No permission. And now I knew exactly how to make her regret ever stepping foot on my property. The second Karen's SUV disappeared beyond the bend in the road, I walked straight into my cabin, grabbed my phone, and made one call. Brad? Yeah, it's Mason again. We've got a situation. Brad Matthews wasn't just a real estate lawyer, he was my real estate lawyer. I'd worked with him when I bought the cabin, and I remembered how thorough he was. The kind of guy who didn't just dot his I's and cross his T's, he made sure they were printed in the right font, on the right paper, under the right jurisdiction. Let me guess, he said before I even finished the story. Green Shores HOA trying to rope you into their circus? Exactly. They've now officially threatened to evict me from my own property. Sent a formal notice and everything. There was a pause on the other end. Then a chuckle. Evict you? From deeded private land? That's insane. Right? But Karen, that's the president's name. She claims they expanded the HOA boundary years ago. Says their board voted to include my lot in the community. Brad snorted. That's not how property law works. You can't vote your way onto someone else's deed. I felt a grin tug at the corners of my mouth. This was why I'd called him. Can we go on the offensive? I asked. I don't just want to prove them wrong. I want to shut this whole thing down before it escalates. Already ahead of you, Brad replied. I pulled the tax parcel overlays and the most recent plat maps. Your land is 100% excluded from the Green Shores HOA. There's no easement, no clause, nothing that binds you to their charter. You're sovereign as it gets. I felt a rush of relief. Even though I'd been confident, it was different hearing it from a legal professional, someone who could actually back me up if this went to court. Perfect, I said. But it gets better. You know that lakefront clubhouse they love so much? Their big pride and joy gathering spot? Sure, Brad said. The one with the fancy pier and fire pit. Yeah. They've been accessing it through a dirt trail that runs straight through the south edge of my property. Silence on the other end for a beat. Then, you're kidding. Nope. I checked the survey stakes this morning. The clubhouse is on their land, but their access road cuts through mine. And they never asked. No easement. No permission. Nothing. Brad let out a slow whistle. Well. That changes everything. Exactly. If they want to play legal games, I'm happy to join. But I'm not bluffing, I'm ready to go all in. All right, he said. Here's what we do. I'll draft a cease and desist letter first, order them to stop using your land immediately. Then we'll hit them with a formal trespassing notice. If they ignore that, we file an injunction. Take it to court and expose the whole mess. Sounds good to me. Oh, and one more thing, he added. If they've used that trail for years, they might try to argue prescriptive easement, but that only sticks if it was open, obvious, and unchallenged for a minimum number of years, and they have to prove it. Spoiler alert, they won't be able to. Let them try, I said. I'm not just defending myself anymore. I'm done being polite. As I hung up the phone, something shifted inside me. No more waiting. No more hoping they'd come to their senses. They wanted a fight? Fine. Now they were going to get one. And the first shot? That cease and desist was going out first thing Monday morning. By the time Monday morning rolled around, I was already on my second cup of black coffee and my third draft of a hand-drawn map showing exactly where the HOA had overstepped. The clubhouse, their pride and joy, a cedar-paneled building with big glass windows and a fancy deck that jutted out toward the lake, sat on their land. That much was true. But the only way to reach that building by car or foot. A narrow, winding trail they had no legal right to use. I traced the path again on my map with a red marker. It curved from the HOA's paved road, dipped slightly into a small ravine, and then cut straight across the southern edge of my property for a full 80 feet before connecting to the clubhouse gravel lot. I knew the land well. George, the former owner, had told me that trail had been there for decades, but it was always just a neighborly thing. But neighborly doesn't cut it anymore when you're being threatened with eviction. I emailed everything to Brad, the map, the GPS data, and photos of the trail, complete with a wooden HOA sign that pointed straight onto my land. A few hours later, he replied with 2 attachments, a cease and desist letter and a notice of trespass. They were short, direct, and legally sound. We sent both via email and certified mail. One to Karen Whitmore directly, and another to the Green Shores HOA board. The clock was officially ticking. Now it was a waiting game. But not for long. That evening, I took a stroll down to the edge of the trail, just to see if any activity had picked up. Sure enough, I spotted 2 HOA maintenance workers rolling down in a golf cart. They were carrying a weed trimmer and a cooler, probably on their way to prep the clubhouse for one of their smug little wine nights. As they approached the trail's edge on my land, I stepped out from behind a tree and raised a hand. "Hey fellas," I said casually. "You might want to turn around. You're trespassing." They looked startled, like they hadn't even considered that anyone would challenge them. One guy in a navy polo leaned forward and said, "This is Green Shores property. We're just doing grounds maintenance." I pointed to a stake in the dirt with my lot number clearly painted on it. "Nope. That's my land. And your board's already been notified. If I see anyone here again, I'll have to call the sheriff." They didn't argue. Just turned around and drove off in silence, their golf cart humming awkwardly into the distance. It was working. But here's the kicker. That little trail was the only practical access point to the clubhouse. The land around it was dense forest and marsh. The HOA never built another road, probably assuming no one would ever object. Which meant that without that trail, their precious clubhouse was as good as cut off. And they knew it. 2 days later, I got an email from the HOA's legal rep asking to discuss possible resolutions. That's lawyer speak for, they're panicking. I wasn't interested in a handshake deal. Not anymore. Not after the threats, the intimidation, the lies about jurisdiction. They wanted to play hardball? Fine. But now I was the one holding the bat. And next up? I was going to make sure the entire community knew what kind of mess their HOA had gotten into. By Friday morning, I had made my decision. No more warnings. No more waiting. No more discussions with HOA lawyers who suddenly wanted to play nice. It was time to take action. So I did what any landowner would do when people start trespassing. I put up a gate. Nothing fancy, just 2 sturdy cedar posts sunk deep into the ground, connected by a heavy-duty steel farm gate I'd ordered from a local supply store. It had a keypad lock on one side and a sign bolted to the top that read, "Private property. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted." I also placed 2 orange cones at the start of the trail and a printed copy of the cease and desist letter in a clear waterproof sleeve, zip-tied to the chain, just in case someone wanted to pretend they didn't know. It wasn't about being aggressive. It was about being clear. And the moment that gate clicked shut, everything changed. Within hours, my phone blew up. First it was a call from an unlisted number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then came an email from Karen Whitmore herself, marked urgent. It was filled with phrases like community disruption, interference with HOA operations, and the best one, unauthorized obstruction of access. I couldn't help but laugh. Unauthorized obstruction? On my own land? But things really exploded when word got out to the community. See, Green Shores prided itself on being the kind of neighborhood where everything revolved around that lakeside clubhouse. Weekly yoga classes. Book club meetings. Monthly HOA mixers with cheap wine and gossip. It wasn't just a building, it was the heart of their suburban kingdom. And now? That heart had been locked behind my gate. By Saturday morning, a small crowd had gathered at the trail entrance. SUV after SUV rolled up, residents piling out in gym shorts and pastel polo shirts, staring at the new barrier like it was a Berlin Wall. I stood on my porch, sipping my coffee, watching the chaos unfold from a distance. It was oddly satisfying. Some folks tried the keypad. Others stood around complaining, phones in hand, probably texting Karen or posting about it on Nextdoor. I even saw one guy try to pull the gate open with both hands. It didn't budge. Then, around noon, Karen herself showed up. She marched right up to the gate in a navy blouse and sunglasses, clipboard under one arm, HOA badge on her chest like it meant something. She rattled the chain, shouted, then pointed at my cabin and yelled, "Mason Holloway, you need to open this gate, Immediately. I stayed right where I was, calm as ever. "Get off my land, Karen." I shouted back. "You've got 5 minutes before I call the sheriff." She hesitated. Because she knew I meant it. Because now she understood, this wasn't a bluff. This wasn't some backwoods loner with a temper. This was a guy with a rock-solid deed, a good lawyer, and no fear of confrontation. She turned on her heel and stormed back to her car, surrounded by residents demanding answers. It was clear, the clubhouse was officially cut off. And this time, I wasn't the one losing sleep. They wanted a war? They just lost their headquarters. And I was only getting started. That Monday morning, a crisp white envelope appeared taped to my front door. Notice of intent to pursue legal action. Signed, of course, by Karen Whitmore, on behalf of the Green Shores Homeowners Association. I read the letter over my oatmeal like it was a poorly written drama script. The wording was dramatic: malicious obstruction, willful damage to community cohesion, and my personal favorite, emotional distress caused to members due to loss of recreational access. Seriously? They were threatening to sue me. Because they couldn't do yoga by the lake anymore? I called Brad immediately. He didn't even try to hide his amusement. "Oh, they're serious," he said. "Serious. And stupid. This isn't even a real lawsuit. It's a scare tactic. There's no court filing, no case number. Just a hollow threat trying to make you panic." "Which I don't," I replied calmly. "But let's say they do try to escalate. What happens then?" "Well," he said, "if they take this to court, they'll have to prove that they have a legal right to use your land. And since they don't, and never did, we'll win. Hands down." Brad had already compiled a binder full of evidence. Survey maps showing my property boundaries. County records confirming no easement had ever been granted. Emails and letters from the HOA threatening me and admitting in writing that they believed my lot was under their jurisdiction. That was their fatal mistake. Karen got cocky and started acting like a dictator, in writing. And now every word she'd used against me was going to come back to bite her. But I didn't stop there. Remember, I said I was 2 steps ahead. While they were preparing their empty lawsuit threat, I was filing something very real, a formal complaint with the county zoning board and the local land use office. Turns out, the clubhouse had been operating without the correct permits for years. They'd built a patio extension, a second parking lot, and even installed an outdoor sound system, all without following proper zoning procedures. Brad helped me dig through the county's online permit portal. And sure enough, the last permit filed for that clubhouse was nearly a decade old, and it didn't cover half the additions they'd made. So I submitted a report. Photos. Measurements. Testimonies. And then I filed a second complaint: unauthorized land usage. That trail through my property wasn't just trespassing, it had caused erosion, disrupted wildlife, and diverted stormwater runoff into my fishing pond. That made it an environmental concern. Now we weren't just talking about private disputes. We were talking county enforcement. Fines. Investigations. Possibly even orders to demolish parts of the structure. Karen had poked the wrong bear. And now the bear had law, facts, and bureaucracy on his side. That evening, I saw a group of HOA board members walking the trail in dress shoes and clipboards, clearly trying to assess the situation. I didn't stop them. This time, I wanted them to see the consequences up close. As the sun set, I got an email from Karen. "Mason, perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot. I'd like to propose a meeting to discuss alternatives. In person. Cordially." Oh, now it was cordial? Cute. But she was too late. The paperwork was already filed. And the clock was ticking, not on me, but on them. It was a sunny Thursday morning when I heard the knock on my cabin door. 3 firm raps. Not like the HOA's nervous tapping or Karen's impatient banging. This knock was official. I opened the door to find a tall man in a tan uniform, wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow over his eyes. "Mr. Holloway?" he asked. "That's me. Deputy Mark Sullivan, County Sheriff's Department. Got a report from the Green Shores Homeowners Association. Something about you blocking access to a community facility?" I nodded slowly. "Come on in. Let me show you what's really going on." He stepped inside, polite but all business. I handed him a folder, the same one I'd given to Brad, filled with property maps, copies of the cease and desist letter, and photos clearly showing the clubhouse trail running straight through my land. He flipped through it without saying much, then let out a quiet whistle. "Well," he said, "looks like someone's been playing HOA Monopoly and forgot to read the rules." I chuckled. That's exactly what I've been saying. We walked outside, and I led him to the gate I'd installed. Still locked. Still sturdy. Still sporting the big private property sign in bold red letters. I pointed to the corner survey marker near the base of the trail, a metal stake with my parcel number engraved. That mark was set by the county. Everything past that belongs to me. And for years, they've been using this trail without my permission. Sullivan rubbed his chin. "You got any issues with people using it before all this?" "Not really," I admitted. "The previous owner let it slide. But once they threatened to evict me and claimed I was part of the HOA, things changed. They crossed the line. Literally." He nodded. It was surreal. But it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the entire neighborhood reclaiming control over their community. The HOA board agreed to suspend all pending fines and hold open elections for new leadership, elections where every resident would have a voice. It felt like a fresh start. No more secret rules. No more threats. Just a community built on trust and respect. For me, locking that gate wasn't just about protecting my property. It sparked a movement. And in the end, that made all the difference. After the HOA's power started crumbling, and the old board was ousted, the neighborhood was ready for a fresh start. But the clubhouse, the very heart of the community, was still off limits. It was time to turn that symbol of division into a place that truly belonged to everyone. I called a neighborhood meeting at my cabin one weekend. I invited anyone who wanted to come, longtime residents, new families, and even some of the people who had been skeptical of me at first. The turnout surprised me. More than 50 people showed up. I started by acknowledging the hard feelings and the damage done. The clubhouse was meant to be a place where we come together, not where we fight over property lines or rules, I said. So, I want to propose something different. I laid out my vision. Instead of an exclusive HOA clubhouse with a closed-door policy, we'd create an open community-run center. A place where families could host events, kids could play, and everyone could feel welcome, without the intimidation and restrictions we've been used to. Some people were hesitant. But how will we manage it? Who will pay for upkeep? They asked. I told them, we'll form a community council. Everyone will have a voice. We'll organize volunteer days for maintenance and improvements. And we can start small, maybe potlucks and outdoor movie nights to get us going. The energy in the room shifted. People began sharing ideas, gardening clubs, art classes, fishing tournaments. Some offered to help with repairs, others volunteered to coordinate events. We agreed to hold regular meetings and create a shared calendar to keep everyone informed. The old rules that had divided us? They were gone. Instead, the community would decide together how to use the space. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Volunteers showed up with tools and paint. We cleared out overgrown bushes, repaired broken benches, and cleaned the old clubhouse inside and out. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. One evening, we hosted our first community barbecue. Neighbors brought food, kids ran around laughing, and even Karen showed up, looking a little humbled but willing to be part of something new. That night, I realized the real power wasn't in gates or lawsuits, it was in bringing people together. The clubhouse was no longer a battleground. It had become a symbol of renewal, a testament to what a community could achieve when it put aside divisions and worked as one. From that day on, the Green Shores community was different. We weren't just neighbors, we were friends, partners, and caretakers of the place we all called home. Just when I thought the worst of the HOA drama was behind me, something unexpected happened. Someone showed up who changed everything. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when a knock came at my cabin door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was curious. When I opened it, there stood a middle-aged man wearing a worn baseball cap and a friendly smile. He introduced himself as Tom Rivers, a longtime resident of the neighboring community, and someone who had been watching the Green Shores situation closely. "I've been following your story," Tom said, "and I think I can help." At first, I was skeptical. I'd been burned by so many false promises and empty threats from the HOA that it was hard to trust anyone claiming to be an ally. But Tom wasn't your typical neighbor. He was a retired land use attorney with over 30 years of experience handling cases exactly like mine. He had helped communities fight overreach by powerful HOAs, defended property rights, and pushed for fair land use across several counties. "I've seen what happens when HOAs get too big for their britches," Tom explained as we sat down with coffee. "They start thinking they own everything. But the law is clear. Private property rights matter, and if they try to bully you, there are ways to fight back that don't involve expensive court battles." He pulled out a folder and showed me sample documents, legal strategies, and cases where he'd successfully helped people regain control of their land. "What's the catch?" I asked. "No catch," he smiled. "I just want to help neighbors stand up to unfair power. And I believe your story needs a strong legal voice." With Tom's guidance, we started organizing a community legal workshop. He came to Green Shores and explained the rights and protections every homeowner has. He showed residents how to spot HOA overreach, how to keep proper documentation, and how to legally challenge unfair rules. The turnout was incredible. People who once felt powerless began to feel empowered. They asked tough questions, took notes, and shared their own HOA horror stories. Tom also helped me draft a comprehensive proposal to submit to the county, outlining specific reforms needed in HOA governance and transparency requirements. We gathered signatures from dozens of residents and made it clear the community wanted change, and we knew the law was on our side. But his biggest help came when Karen and the remaining HOA loyalists tried to sneak in a last-minute vote to reinstate the old clubhouse rules and fines. Armed with Tom's legal knowledge, we challenged the validity of the meeting, pointing out procedural violations and lack of proper notice. The county board agreed, nullifying the vote. It was a huge win. Tom became more than just a legal advisor. He became a trusted friend and an unexpected ally who gave our community the confidence and tools to protect itself. Thanks to him, we weren't just fighting the HOA's power anymore, we were rewriting the rules altogether. That's when I realized something important. Sometimes, the difference between losing and winning isn't just about fighting hard, but about having the right people by your side. And with Tom, I knew we were unstoppable. After Tom stepped in with his expertise and guidance, everything in Green Shores began to feel different, hopeful, energized, and ready for a fresh start. For years, the HOA had ruled with an iron fist, but now the neighborhood was ready to rewrite the rules, and this time we were in charge. Tom and I helped organize a series of community workshops focused on leadership, transparency, and how to run a fair homeowners association. We invited everyone, longtime residents, newcomers, families, even those who had supported the old HOA, to come and participate. The goal was simple: build an HOA that truly represents us, not some self-appointed few. At these meetings, people talked openly about their frustrations, shared ideas for improvement, and most importantly, started to listen to each other again. We created committees to oversee maintenance, social events, neighborhood safety, and dispute resolution. Every committee had a clear charter and reported back to the entire community. I volunteered to help lead the committee responsible for community relations and legal compliance, making sure no shady tactics ever slipped through again. The old board was dissolved, and fresh elections were held. This time, every homeowner had a vote, and the new board was made up of neighbors who genuinely cared about the community's well-being. We rewrote the HOA bylaws to ensure transparency. All meetings would be public, records accessible, and fines strictly regulated with clear appeal processes. No more secret backroom decisions. The clubhouse, which had once been a symbol of division, transformed into a hub of collaboration and celebration. It hosted potlucks, book clubs, fishing tournaments, and seasonal festivals, events where everyone felt welcome. Even Karen, who had once led the charge against me, started attending events, gradually rebuilding trust. We installed a community bulletin board by the gate, where announcements and minutes were posted so no one felt left out. As weeks turned to months, the neighborhood's vibe changed dramatically. People waved to each other on morning walks, kids played together by the lake, and new friendships blossomed. The legal troubles became a distant memory, replaced by shared goals and mutual respect. Looking back, it amazed me how a locked gate and a stand against injustice could spark such a powerful movement. We built a future together, one where community means more than rules on paper. It means listening, respecting, and standing up for what's right. Green Shores isn't just a place to live anymore. It's a place to belong. And that makes all the difference. Looking back on everything that happened with the HOA and my lake cabin, there's a lot I've learned, lessons that go way beyond property lines and legal battles. It was more than just a fight over land. It became a story about standing up, community, and the power of perseverance. First, I learned the importance of knowing your rights. Before all this started, I had a vague idea about property laws and HOA rules, but not the full picture. When the HOA threatened me, I almost gave in because I thought they had the upper hand. But once I educated myself, and with Tom's help, I realized that knowledge is power. If you don't know your rights, it's easy to be bullied. But if you do, you can stand firm. Second, I learned that communication is everything. For too long, the HOA ruled behind closed doors, making decisions without input from the people they represented. That secrecy bred resentment and mistrust. When we started opening up meetings, listening to neighbors, and being transparent, the community began to heal. People felt heard, and that changed everything. Third, I discovered how critical it is to build alliances and ask for help. I tried handling the HOA alone at first, but it quickly became overwhelming. It wasn't until Tom showed up with his legal expertise that we gained the strength to push back effectively. Sometimes, you can't do it alone, and reaching out to the right people can change the course of a conflict. Fourth, the battle taught me the power of standing your ground with integrity. I could have taken shortcuts or retaliated in anger, but I chose to stick to the truth and follow the law. That integrity earned me respect, even from some of my critics, and helped build a foundation for real change. And lastly, I learned that community is about more than shared spaces, it's about shared values. The clubhouse, the trails, the lake, they're all important, but what really mattered was creating a place where people felt safe, respected, and connected. That vision drove everything forward. This fight wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, frustration, and loneliness. But those challenges made the victories sweeter. If you ever find yourself facing a tough situation, whether it's with an HOA, a neighbor, or anyone else, remember, stand firm, know your rights, communicate openly, build alliances, and never lose sight of your values. Because sometimes, standing up for yourself means standing up for the whole community. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me forever. Now that the dust has settled and the community has rebuilt itself from the ground up, the future of Green Shores looks brighter than ever. What started as a fight to protect my little lake cabin turned into a movement that transformed an entire neighborhood, and it's only the beginning. The new Green Shores is no longer about control or power struggles. It's about collaboration, respect, and a shared vision for a community that works for everyone. The fresh HOA board has brought in new ideas and energy, focusing on sustainability, inclusivity, and open communication. One of the biggest changes we're working on is improving the lake itself. For years, access had been limited and mismanaged, but now we're planning community cleanup days to clear debris, plant native vegetation, and maintain the shoreline. We're even discussing a small dock where families can safely launch kayaks and fishing boats, a space designed for fun and connection, not exclusion. The clubhouse, once a symbol of conflict, has become the hub of neighborhood life. From book clubs to yoga classes, potluck dinners to movie nights under the stars, it's a place where everyone feels welcome and involved. The calendar is packed with events that bring people of all ages together, fostering friendships and a true sense of belonging. We're also working on building stronger ties with local authorities to ensure that the HOA operates transparently and within legal boundaries. With Tom's continued guidance, we've established a formal advisory committee that reviews policies and makes sure residents' voices are heard before any major decisions are made. Another exciting development is the formation of a youth committee. Younger residents, many of whom had felt overlooked in the past, are now actively participating in community planning and projects. They're organizing cleanup campaigns, sports tournaments, and educational workshops about nature and conservation. It's inspiring to see their enthusiasm and commitment. Looking ahead, there are plans to enhance neighborhood safety with better lighting along trails and improved emergency response coordination. We're investing in technology too, with a shared online portal where residents can access documents, report issues, and stay up to date with community news instantly. Of course, challenges remain. Any community faces ups and downs, but the difference now is that we handle problems together. Open dialogue and mutual respect have become our go-to tools, not fear or exclusion. Personally, I'm proud to see how far we've come. From that first knock on my door, the one that sparked everything, to this thriving, vibrant neighborhood, it's been a wild ride. But the best part is knowing that Green Shores belongs to all of us now. It's a place where neighbors support each other, where differences are respected, and where everyone has a voice. The fight wasn't just about me or the cabin. It was about reclaiming a sense of home and community. And as we move forward, I'm confident that Green Shores will continue to grow stronger, more inclusive, and more connected. So, what does the future hold? It holds possibility, hope, and a community united by more than just property lines, by shared dreams and respect for one another. And that's a future worth fighting for. If you're watching this and going through your own battle with an HOA, or any kind of community conflict, I want you to hear this loud and clear: you are not alone, and you don't have to back down. I've been there. I was just an ordinary guy with a lake cabin, trying to enjoy my property peacefully, when the HOA came knocking with threats, fines, and impossible rules. It felt overwhelming, unfair, and downright scary at times. But standing my ground taught me something powerful: you can fight back, and you can win. The first step is to know your rights. Don't rely on hearsay or assumptions. Dig into your property documents, local laws, and HOA agreements. If it sounds complicated, get help, whether it's a legal expert like Tom, a community advocate, or even just a neighbor who's been through it before. Second, document everything. Keep copies of letters, emails, meeting minutes, and any communication with the HOA. This creates a paper trail that can protect you if things escalate. Third, build a support network. Talk to your neighbors, find allies, and work together. There's strength in numbers, and many HOAs rely on residents being divided and intimidated. When you unite, the HOA can't ignore you. Fourth, stay calm and respectful. It's easy to get angry or frustrated, and I won't lie, I had my moments, but reacting with integrity and patience often wins more battles than yelling or threats. And finally, never give up. The fight might be long and exhausting, but every small victory matters. Remember why you love your home and your community, and use that as fuel to keep going. If I've learned one thing from my experience, it's that a strong community, built on trust, transparency, and respect, is unstoppable. When people come together to protect what's theirs and stand for what's right, they can overcome even the toughest obstacles. So if your HOA is giving you a hard time, don't despair. Take a deep breath, gather your facts, and get ready to stand tall. Because your home, your rights, and your community are worth fighting for. And who knows? Maybe your story will inspire others, just like mine did. Looking back on everything from that first knock on my cabin door to now, I'm struck by just how much this journey changed me, not just as a homeowner, but as a person. At first, it was just about protecting my little slice of peace by the lake. I never imagined it would turn into a full-on battle with an HOA, a legal fight, and a movement to reshape an entire community. But that's exactly what happened. What this whole experience taught me is that standing up for yourself often means standing up for something bigger. It's about defending your rights, yes, but it's also about building connections, creating a stronger community, and helping others find their voice too. There were times I felt frustrated and isolated, when the HOA's tactics seemed overwhelming. But those moments made the victories even sweeter. Every small win felt like a step toward reclaiming not just my cabin, but the neighborhood spirit. The friends I made along the way, neighbors who showed up for meetings, helped clean up the clubhouse, or just offered a kind word, reminded me how powerful community really is. And then there was Tom, whose unexpected help turned the tide. His knowledge and willingness to fight alongside us was a game changer. It showed me the value of reaching out and not trying to go it alone. This journey also made me appreciate the importance of communication and transparency. The old HOA's secretive ways caused so much pain and division. But opening the dialogue, listening to each other, and working together transformed our neighborhood. For me personally, this battle wasn't just about a clubhouse or a property dispute. It became a lesson in resilience, leadership, and hope. I'm proud of what we accomplished, how we turned conflict into collaboration, and distrust into friendship. Green Shores is no longer just a place I own. It's home, in the truest sense of the word. And as I look forward, I'm excited to see what the future holds. The lessons I learned here will stay with me forever, and I hope my story can help others facing similar challenges. Because at the end of the day, fighting for your home means fighting for why. If you've been watching this story and thinking, how can I protect my property and community from HOA overreach? You're not alone. I want to share some practical steps you can take right now to guard your rights and help build a strong, fair neighborhood. 1. Understand your HOA documents thoroughly. Start by reading your HOA's governing documents, the covenants, conditions and restrictions, CC and RS, bylaws and rules. These documents outline what the HOA can and cannot do. Knowing them inside and out is key to spotting when the HOA steps beyond its authority. 2. Keep detailed records. Document every interaction with the HOA. Save emails, letters, notices, and even take notes during meetings. A solid paper trail is invaluable if you ever need to dispute a fine, rule, or decision. 3. Attend HOA meetings regularly. Make it a point to attend HOA board meetings or annual general meetings. Show up, ask questions, and listen carefully. Being present helps you stay informed and lets the board know you're paying attention. 4. Build relationships with neighbors. A united community is a strong community. Talk to your neighbors about their experiences and concerns. You'd be surprised how many people feel powerless but want to be involved. Organize or join community groups or committees to increase collective influence. 5. Know your legal rights. Local laws vary, but in many places, HOAs must follow strict procedures for rule enforcement and meetings. Consult a real estate or land use attorney if you suspect violations. Many offer free initial consultations and can help you understand your options. 6. Stay calm and professional. When conflicts arise, keep your communication respectful and fact-based. Emotional reactions might feel satisfying in the moment but can weaken your position. 7. Use mediation when possible. Some disputes can be resolved through mediation, which is faster and less expensive than court. Look for community mediation services that specialize in HOA issues. 8. Advocate for transparency and accountability. Push for clear rules on fines, appeals, and meeting notices. Request that meeting minutes and financial reports be shared with all residents. Transparency reduces conflict. 9. Volunteer to serve on the HOA board or committees. If possible, run for a board position or join committees. Being on the inside lets you influence decisions and promote fairness. 10. Stay informed and educate others. Share what you learn with neighbors. The more informed your community is, the harder it is for any group to abuse power. Remember, the goal is to create a neighborhood where everyone feels respected and heard. It's not about tearing down the HOA but about making it serve the community fairly. If you take these steps, you'll be in a much stronger position to protect your property, preserve your rights, and build a neighborhood that's truly home. Your property is more than just land or buildings. It's your peace, your sanctuary, and your community. Guard it well. Our community, your values, and your peace of mind. And that's a journey worth taking. After all the chaos and conflict with the HOA, my little lake cabin became more than just a getaway spot. It turned into my personal safe haven. A place where I could recharge, think clearly, and enjoy the peace I fought so hard to protect. When I first bought the cabin, it was a simple retreat, a rustic spot to escape city noise, fish by the lake, and spend quiet weekends. But after the HOA drama unfolded, that cabin took on a whole new meaning. I realized I needed to create an environment that not only felt peaceful but also reinforced the idea that this was my space, my home, where I could feel secure and in control. The first thing I did was improve the security. I installed a sturdy fence around the property, not to shut people out, but to clearly mark my boundaries. I added motion sensor lights and security cameras around the cabin's perimeter to keep an eye on things when I wasn't there. This wasn't about paranoia. It was about taking control and making sure no one could sneak around or intimidate me. Next, I focused on making the cabin more comfortable and inviting. I refurbished the interior with warm wood accents, cozy furniture, and soft lighting. I added shelves with books on local history, fishing guides, and even some of my favorite novels. The idea was to create a sanctuary where I could unwind fully, surrounded by things I loved. Outside, I landscaped the yard with native plants and flowers that attracted birds and butterflies, turning the space into a little wildlife haven. I built a small deck overlooking the lake with comfortable chairs, perfect for morning coffee or evening sunsets. It became my personal sanctuary to reconnect with nature. I also set up a small workshop space in one corner of the cabin for projects and hobbies. Having a creative outlet was crucial for me, especially during stressful times. Whether it was fixing something around the cabin or working on woodworking projects, that space helped me stay grounded and productive. But the most important change wasn't physical, it was mental. I began practicing mindfulness and gratitude each day, reminding myself why I fought to keep this place and what it truly meant to me. The cabin became a symbol of resilience, freedom, and self-reliance. I invited close friends and family over for quiet gatherings, fishing trips, and campfire nights. Sharing the space with people I trusted and cared about helped turn the cabin into a home, not just a property. Of course, I stayed vigilant about the HOA's actions, but rather than letting their threats consume me, I focused on building this positive, safe space. Every time I walked down the quiet path to the lake or sat on the deck watching the water ripple, I felt a deep sense of peace and accomplishment. Turning my cabin into a safe haven was about reclaiming control and creating a place where I could heal and thrive, no matter what challenges came next. And that's the power of home. It's not just about walls or land, it's about what you build inside, physically and emotionally. One of the most surprising parts of this whole ordeal with the HOA was the unexpected support that came my way. When I first got those threatening notices, I thought I was facing this fight alone. But as it turned out, I wasn't, and that support changed everything. At first, my neighbors kept their distance. Some were scared of the HOA, others didn't want to get involved. But when I started sharing my story, opening up about the unfair fines and restrictions, people began to realize they weren't alone either. The HOA's grip had affected more than just me. Slowly but surely, people started reaching out. Some neighbors told me about similar experiences, secret meetings, unfair rules, and fines that seemed designed to intimidate rather than protect. Others expressed frustration with how the clubhouse and trails were managed, and how their voices were ignored. The turning point came when a few of us formed a small neighborhood group to talk openly and organize. We met at the local library, in each other's homes, or even around campfires by the lake. What started as a few worried homeowners grew into a community movement. Then, unexpectedly, Tom appeared, a local lawyer who happened to own a cabin nearby. He overheard our conversations at a meeting and offered his help pro bono. His legal expertise was a game changer. With his guidance, we understood the HOA's bylaws, local property laws, and how to challenge the unfair fines. What amazed me most was how many residents stepped up in other ways too. Some volunteered to help with paperwork and communication. Others used their skills to create flyers, social media pages, and petitions to raise awareness. People who had been silent suddenly found their voice. Even some of the younger residents, who had felt overlooked, became active participants, helping organize events and spreading the word. Their energy and passion added momentum that the HOA couldn't ignore. Beyond the neighborhood, a few local journalists picked up our story, shining a light on the HOA's overreach. The public attention put extra pressure on the board to be more transparent and accountable. This wave of support reminded me that no one fights alone, especially when injustice affects a whole community. When people come together, pooling their resources, skills, and energy, they become a force too strong to push aside. The solidarity we built changed the dynamic completely. The HOA could no longer intimidate individuals because the community stood united. For me, the unexpected support was a lifeline. It turned a stressful, isolating experience into a powerful collective effort. It showed me the value of connection and the strength we all have when we stand together. So if you're facing your own battles, remember, reach out, share your story, and find allies. Sometimes, help comes from the most unexpected places, and it might just be the key to turning the tide. When the HOA first started fining me and threatening eviction from my own lake cabin, I realized quickly that this wasn't just a simple neighborhood squabble, this was a legal battle. And if I wanted to win, I had to understand and use the law to my advantage. At first, all their letters and fines felt like an overwhelming flood of rules and legal jargon. I didn't have a background in law, so I felt out of my depth. That's when Tom, the local lawyer who owned a cabin nearby, stepped in. His help was invaluable. He broke down complex legal terms into clear, simple language and showed me exactly what the HOA could and couldn't do under the law. The first step was to thoroughly review the HOA's governing documents, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC and RS. These are the rules that the HOA is supposed to follow. I learned that many of the fines and eviction threats they'd issued against me were not supported by these documents. They had overstepped their authority in trying to control how I used my property. We also looked into local and state property laws. In many places, HOAs have limits on how much control they can exert over private landowners. Knowing these laws was a game changer because it meant the HOA could not just impose whatever rules they wanted, they had to operate within legal boundaries. Tom helped me file formal appeals against the fines. We prepared detailed responses that cited the exact language in the CC and RS and state laws that protected my rights. It wasn't just about arguing, it was about showing that the HOA's actions were unlawful. When the HOA tried to escalate by sending more aggressive notices and threatening eviction, we pushed back harder. I learned about due process rights, meaning the HOA had to follow certain procedures before taking drastic actions. They had to give proper notice, hold hearings, and allow me to present my side, things they had skipped. At one point, the HOA board tried to hold a closed-door meeting to discuss my case without letting me attend. With Tom's guidance, I filed a complaint citing open meeting laws that require transparency. This forced them to open up their meetings and document everything publicly. Using the law wasn't just about fighting back, it was about leveling the playing field. The HOA had power and resources, but with the right legal knowledge and support, I was able to stand toe-to-toe. We also explored mediation options. Instead of going straight to court, mediation helped resolve some disputes faster and with less cost. The HOA had to agree to listen and negotiate, which was a huge step forward. In the end, the legal fight was exhausting and complex, but it taught me how important it is to know your rights and not be intimidated by authority. The law is a tool, and if you understand it, you can protect your home and community. So if you ever find yourself facing unfair HOA actions, don't panic. Get informed, get support, and use the law as your shield. You don't have to fight blindfolded, there are rules that protect you. For me, learning to use the law was the key to turning a terrifying situation into a victory that restored my peace and security. After months of tension, fines, and endless battles with the HOA, there was a moment, that unforgettable moment, when I finally felt free. It wasn't flashy or dramatic like in the movies, but it was powerful. It was the quiet victory that made all the struggle worth it. It came on a calm afternoon, just as the sun was starting to set over the lake. I was sitting on my cabin's deck, sipping coffee, watching the gentle ripples on the water. For the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of peace wash over me. The HOA had officially dropped their eviction threats. Their fines were reversed, and a new fairer board was taking shape in the neighborhood, thanks to the community movement we'd built. Transparency and respect were finally replacing secrecy and intimidation. That day, I realized something profound. I was free to enjoy my property without fear or guilt. The cabin wasn't just a place to escape anymore, it was my sanctuary, my victory, and a symbol of standing up for what's right. The journey had been exhausting. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the constant conflict felt like too much. But this moment reminded me why I fought so hard. It wasn't just about me, it was about protecting the freedom and peace of everyone in the neighborhood. What made this freedom even sweeter was knowing that the struggle sparked change for others. Neighbors felt empowered to speak up, to participate, and to demand fairness. The HOA board began operating with accountability, and the clubhouse that once symbolized control and division became a place for community gatherings and friendship. Looking out at the lake, I felt gratitude for the support from my neighbors, the help from Tom, and even the lessons learned through the fight. Most of all, I felt proud. Proud that I stood my ground, that I protected my home, and that I helped create a better neighborhood. That moment of freedom wasn't about winning a battle. It was about reclaiming peace, respect, and community. And it's a moment I hope anyone facing similar challenges can experience too. As my story comes to an end, I want to leave you with a few key lessons and takeaways, things I wish I had known at the start of this whole ordeal with the HOA. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that knowledge and community can be your greatest weapons when you're facing challenges like these. First and foremost, never underestimate the power of standing up for yourself and your property. When the HOA tried to bully me with unfair fines and threats of eviction, it was tempting to just comply or stay quiet. But I realized that if I didn't stand my ground, I would lose more than just my cabin. I would lose my peace, my rights, and my sense of control over my own life. You have to be willing to fight for what's yours, and sometimes that means getting uncomfortable and facing conflict head-on. Second, knowledge is your best defense. Understanding your HOA's rules, local laws, and your rights as a property owner gave me the confidence to challenge their overreach. If I had ignored the legal details or simply accepted what they said at face value, I would have lost. So, take time to read your HOA's documents carefully. If something doesn't make sense, ask questions or seek legal advice. Ignorance can cost you dearly. Third, you don't have to fight alone. One of the most powerful parts of my journey was the unexpected support from neighbors, friends, and professionals like Tom, the lawyer. When you share your story and build connections, you create a community that can stand up to unfair practices together. Isolation only makes you vulnerable, but unity is strength. So reach out, communicate, and build alliances. Fourth, use the law as your tool, not just a threat. Many people fear legal battles because they seem complicated or expensive. But understanding the legal framework empowers you. Whether it's knowing how to appeal fines, demand transparency, or insist on proper procedures, the law exists to protect homeowners too. Don't be afraid to learn and use it. Fifth, transform conflict into opportunity. What started as a frustrating battle with the HOA became an opportunity to build a stronger, more transparent community. It brought neighbors together and inspired positive changes that benefit everyone. So instead of just reacting to conflict, think about how you can use it to create something better. Finally, remember that your home is more than just property. It's your sanctuary. Protecting your space isn't just about fences or legal papers. It's about preserving your peace of mind, your freedom to live as you choose, and your connection to the place you love. Fight for that. Protect that. And never let anyone take that away from you. If there's one hope I have for anyone watching this, it's that my story inspires you to be courageous, informed, and united. Challenges will come, but you can overcome them. You can protect your home and your community. You can turn hardship into triumph. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you on your own journey, wherever that may lead. Thanks for sticking with me through this crazy journey. If you ever find yourself facing an overbearing HOA or unfair rules, remember, you're not alone, and you can fight back. Stand up for your rights, get informed, and lean on your community, because your home is worth protecting. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And drop a comment below. Have you ever dealt with a difficult HOA or neighborhood dispute? I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, stay strong and keep standing up for what's yours.